Hey guys, subscribe for daily knife content. And if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very exciting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Viper Storm designed by Rick Hinderer. This is a Hinderer knife that you can actually buy right now. Now it's made by Viper Knives out of Italy, but this is a legit Hinderer design. One that was on the radar and then off the radar and has stayed kind of off the radar for a while. I wasn't sure how I would feel about this, and it always was kind of, oh yeah, there's that other like weird cousin Hinderer that I've never reviewed. If you are new to my channel, I'm a gigantic Hinderer nut. I've reviewed almost every single model that Rick Hinderer has ever come out with, and almost every single collaboration that's ever existed. You can find it you can find all those videos in my Hinderer Knives playlist. You can buy this right now. I'm gonna link this guy right down in the description. The price is much better than a real Hinderer. I'm surprised at how much good there is here. I'm really excited to talk with you guys about this. First off, this was sent to me by Colorful Filth on Instagram. His Instagram is awesome. This is the gentleman who brought us multiple collaborations through Northern Knives. It's worth checking out his Instagram. Please give him a follow. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It's also because of my generous patrons. You can find a link for my Patreon right down in the description. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and do some measurements here. This is obviously kind of a cousin of the half track. It's also kind of a cousin of the MP1. We'll talk about that. Let's go ahead and do this here. Overall length coming in at, if you measure it to the back of the scales, 7 1/4. If you go all the way to the Hinderer Modular Backspacer System, or HMBS, it's about 7.5 inches. The blade length is coming in just a hair over 3 inches. Be careful about that. That will definitely get you in trouble in some areas. Cutting edge is coming in at about 2.9. How about some size comparisons? First up, let's do an important one here. What does it look like up against an actual XM18? So the actual XM18 is about 8 1/4 inches overall. I wish I had a half track here to compare this to, but I don't. The half track is much shorter than this. This is kind of in that comfy in-between size. It's very close to the Hinderer MP1. Those of you who have that knife, not a lot of people have that, but yeah, I mean, it's a good size. It's not too small. It's kind of a Goldilocks situation, right? How about up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and its little brother, the Ontario Rat Model 2, which, for whatever reason, was not ready to deploy. So there you go, kind of in between there. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3? This knife is actually really similar in overall size to the Spyderco Para 3. It carries and feels different, right? It's surprising, actually. It feels a little bigger than the Para 3, but it's almost exactly the same size. Last but not least, the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Benchmade Mini Griptilian. A little shorter than the full-size Ritter Hogue, definitely larger than the small Griptilian. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. I picked up the wrong knife to move. Up against the Spyderco Para 3 in terms of thickness, we are looking at a slightly thicker knife. Nothing to freak out about for sure. How about length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3? This is not a tall knife. Even with the inclusion of the flipper tab, maximum height, I mean, like knives like these knives are still going to clear it, right? So if you've been used to carrying these, this guy isn't going to bother you. If you got other stuff in your pocket, right, maybe so. If you don't, if you're like me, don't carry anything else in your pocket, you're going to be just fine. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. Get out my tools as per usual. Tools are very inexpensive, very recommendable. You can find them all down in the description. T10, yeah, I checked this, and I'll explain why later. The pivot's a T10. That's great. And then the body screws, which I didn't check, those are going to be T8, right? And then we've got a filler tab, which is something that is modular with actual Hinderer accessories, much like the ZT-056, well, not the 0562, but the 0392. I think the 0562 shares the same pivot barrel size. Anyways, yeah, this is modular with actual Hinderer parts. In fact, the pocket clip is almost exactly a Hinderer clip. He's missing a screw here. I'm actually going to replace that for him. Now I don't know that the official Hinderer pivot will fit this. I have no idea. It does include a Hinderer design part called the Hinderer Modular Backspacer System, or HMBS. They do make other HMBS designs for this. They're still available. I'll make sure that they're also linked down below. Make sure, though, there are different HMBS systems, as far as I understand, that will fit certain models, and not just make sure that it will fit the Viper Storm if you're going to go that route. For those of you thinking, I really don't want that big thing sticking up off the back of my knife, I'd rather that it just wasn't there. Well, here's the nice thing, because I kind of agree with you. The HMBS, we'll talk about that here in a sec. I think it's potentially a good idea. It just it didn't work out super well. This is a T6 screw right here. It's how these all work. You just loosen it to a certain point, and then you just remove it, and it's just standoffs underneath. That's honestly probably how I would carry this. I don't need this. This one has a glass breaker on it, and you can attach a lanyard to it. They've got one that's just an oversized lanyard loop, if you don't want the glass breaker, right? So there you go. I mean, whether you want it or you don't want it, you have the option with simple tools to simply remove it, and you're not lessening it in terms of structural integrity or anything like that. The barrel spacers are the items doing the job of support or integrity anyway, so you're good, right? It's just for your information. That's what we're looking at there. So yeah, there's quite a few parts on this, different sizes. It's basically a really thick titanium. Well, it's basically a frame lock with overlays, much like the half track was and the full track. I think it really would have been a cool idea to do what the full track did. In fact, I think they should have done this on the half track. The full track's backspacer worked very similarly, except it was like a spring clip-in, so you didn't have to, loosen a screw. And it had the tool for disassembly. It had all of the heads included right there on the backspacer, the HMBS, and you could remove everything. I think that would have made way more sense, but that's not what happened here. So, oh well, it's not really that big of a deal. Let's see here. Let's do blade stock thickness, weight, stuff like that. There's no milling on the inside. Yeah, sorry, I had to look through my light. And I think the blade stock, I mean, this feels like a Hinderer, right? I mean, we have robustness, not completely and totally unnecessary robustness, but it's there. Blade stock is coming in at about 100, well, it says 157. It's probably 155. This is built similar, it honestly feels kind of ZT-esque, right? So we have that robustness between what I expect from ZT Hinderer, right? It's there. It feels like a Hinderer. I mean, even in the finishes and everything, I'm actually really surprised. I kind of thought this would be like a, jokey, yeah, Hinderer designed it, but it didn't really. No, it feels like a Hinderer. I'm actually really impressed with a lot of this. I think it's really cool that they included some actual Hinderer parts, right? I love the fact that the fasteners, a lot of them are oversized and give that sort of Hinderer aesthetic. I think a lot of people who are really trying to hunt down a Hinderer right now would be pleasantly surprised with this. Those weird little elements that, bring people joy when it comes to Hinderer knives. A lot of them are present here. Let's get the scale out. I'll take a guess. 4.75 ounces is what I'm going to guess. Hey, I was pretty close. 4.62 ounces. That's going to be heavy for some people, not heavy for other people. That's kind of right in my zone for carry, right? So do with that information what you will, and pay attention to your local laws. All right, let's have a look at this. It's very similar aesthetically to the half track, but it's kind of elongated and it's kind of smoothed over. It's not quite as angular and chunky, angry, right? The half track reminds me a lot of Gimli from Lord of the Rings. This is a little more Strider, right? Not Mick Strider. I'm saying Strider from Lord of the Rings, right? It's not quite Legolas. It's not all, the fire tack is kind of Legolas. This is kind of right in between. Weird. Okay, thanks for the random Lord of the Rings reference. But yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. These edges are nicely knocked down. They leave these areas open so you can kind of see the contrast of the titanium underneath. I'm not always in favor of that, but it's done nicely here. This looks good. It could have easily been done. Like an example of like where that doesn't look good is the ZT0393, the one that's modeled after the Eclipse. Oh no, didn't like those. Actually, originally the idea, if you look at the Hinderer Maximus, I think that hourglass overlay shape was definitely pulled from the Maximus. This looks good. The lines, it's not too much, right? But the lines all follow here, so it looks good. It looks classy. Got some very light peel ply texturing. It's almost smooth, right? No real traction here, but it's present. You can feel it. Fit and finish, I mean, seating of the hardware, everything like that. Everything honestly looks great. It really does. No idea. I didn't ask you, Paul. I want to ask you about what happened here. You just looked down and it was gone one day. Sometimes you got to make sure that those are snug, right? Don't need to use Loctite. I'm not talking to him. I'm talking to everybody because this can happen to anybody, right? You just check your pocket clip screws periodically. Those are pretty important because if they both fall out and clip falls out, you could lose the knife if you're not paying attention. But yeah, that's probably what happened there. No big deal. Ergonomically, surprisingly, you can get a full grip on this guy. When I read the specs, I was like, nah, that's not going to work. No, you can, and it's pretty comfortable. Because the clip is positioned so low, that bill goes right into your palm. It's different on, like my hands prefer the XM18 3.5 inch. The bill of this clip it falls into a spot that's about right here, and it's not so bad because there's kind of a divot there. This wants to fall right into it's like right here, digging into this pad on my hand. It's one of those things where even though the functionality of the Hinderer clip is fantastic, depending on the size of the knife and where it's positioned, it might really bother you. For regular cuts, right, if you're like opening up a package from Amazon, you're not going to be like, oh, my hand, oh, thank goodness I ordered moisturizer this time. No, I mean, that's not really you're going to be dealing with simple cuts. But if you're going to work with it for long periods of time, then yeah, you might want to be wearing gloves anyway. This is definitely a knife that you can take out and use. I mean, this Hinderer designs in general scream like use, real use. Go outside and use them and throw them around and whatever, right? I've been doing it. This is my user XM. It is not baby. The edge is chewed up. This thing does get thrown around and beaten on. Sometimes I use it to pry stuff. Whatever, right? Hinderer designs and, real Hinderers or collaboration Hinderers, right? That you can use them, right? They're generally a little bit more robust. But anyways, yeah, I'm happy with the overall fit and finish. A lot of people aren't going to like that filler tab there. I kind of like it. There's lots of different filler tabs out there that you can buy if you want to customize your Hinderer and give it some flair, right? You want to spice it up. You can do that. Add some decorative, non-utilitarian embellishment, right? That's the name of the game with Hinderer knives. It's Legos, essentially. If you like that, great. If you don't like it, well, then you've got this oval on this side, right? It's not really that big of a deal because we've got some other contrasting stonewashed titanium, so it doesn't really look that out of place. And lefties can still enjoy this despite it being a right-handed frame block, liner lock thing. I'm right-handed and I don't really have a problem manipulating this, right? So if you wanted to switch the pocket clip over, you can still enjoy it. The pivot is free spinning, but the tolerances are good enough. I found that I got down to a certain point and it will tighten and be just fine. So that's kind of a bummer. I think Hinderer across the board needs to come up with some universal D-shaped pivot system, which would, I can kind of understand why right now they're not doing it because a lot of their stuff is modular, backwards compatible, right? So they do that with new models. Maybe it requires they have a different pivot altogether, in which case, they lose some of that. They lose some of what people love about a lot of their knives. But anyways, we have where is the stop? So the stop pin is internal and it's fixed to the blade and it rides in slots in there. I kind of like that. It's hidden and works very similarly to external stops like on the XM. I like that because you have two bracing points instead of just one. That stop pin back there is actually the closed position stop pin. But if these weren't here and the tank of the blade were interacting with just this stop pin, it's just a single point of contact. 2 points of contact doesn't add any massively meaningful, advantage. It's just the blade is a little bit more stabilized if you're going to be doing some goofy cuts, right? It's a little bit of a stronger setup in my opinion. So there you go. Something that really impressed me was the finish on this. I am bored to death of satin finished blades. It just, you can get a satin finish on this, right? But the tumbling on this looks great. gosh, that nice reflectivity. This is not too far off from the finish that's on a true Hinderer. In fact, looking at them side by side, no, I mean, it really looks good. I love a light, sort of fine grain structure, reflective tumbling. It just looks nice. On top of that, edges all nicely knocked down. This feels like a Hinderer blade. It's got that glassy smoothness. This is nice. I like this a lot. It's pretty thick behind the edge, right? I mean, this is not going to be like like you're not going to be splitting, the fibers of a paper towel on a molecular level or anything like that. But will it cut? Yeah. Will it do just fine for EDC? Yeah. I mean, it's a simple drop point blade with a nice wedge. It's a handsome blade, honestly. That thumb stud, I haven't been using the thumb stud, actually. I've been using the, you know what's funny? The thumb studs on a Hinderer are not optimally placed for deployment. God damn. It hurts, especially on the flipper versions because the detent's so strong. They're placed as external stops, right? So they're not in an optimal position for deployment. You can do it, right? This guy, it's so similar. It has that awkward, the thumb studs aren't really in the right place. But they are meant as deployment mechanisms. They should have been moved up a little bit higher, I think. It's not really that bad. And the detent's not so heavy that it's going to really bother you. They could have moved them back. They actually could have shaped the scales in a way that to make it just like a Hinderer with the external stops. They didn't do it. It's not really that big of a deal. The thumb studs themselves are shaped pretty well. It's just you have to get a little low on and you also have that situation where when you flip it, there's meat on your index finger that'll get trapped underneath the flipper tab and kind of slow you down. Not that big of a deal. Use the flipper tab, right? It's not really that much. It's a little bit, maybe a 1/4 inch in the cutting path. That probably could have been remedied by moving them up just a little bit, but they didn't, so whatever. Jimping, a little bit different a lot different than what's on a regular Hinderer knife, but it works, and it's in the right place. This is kind of like Eclipse, Half Track, MP1, it's all kind of mixed together there. This is that medium track that I've always talked, a lot of people pointed out when I said, Hinderer does the full track, or they used to do the full track, the big giant tank of a knife, literally full track based on and then they did the half track, right? Both of those came from tanks, apparently. And it was a little bit too small for me. This is kind of that medium track knife that I, had always talked about. I just didn't realize that this was essentially what that was. It's great. I mean, it really does fit well, and it gives me that Hinderer feeling, right? You're locked in here. Ergos are good. Just the position of the pocket clip is kind of a bummer, but looks great. Blade looks great. Excellent. Really happy. So Viper Storm, Viper knives, obviously that's the name of the company, and then the Storm is the model. It's pretty aggressive. It makes me want to throw a bunch of other words because it's like Viper Storm, helicopter, plasma cannon. It's a lot too really aggressive nouns. Hinderer Viper Storm, right? I mean, cool. Yeah. It sounds cool, but it also sounds like, wow, that's super aggressive. Little bit much here. I wish it was smaller, right? Or that it just set it somewhere else. And then you got the Hinderer logo on the other side, which I've always liked, and then it's M390, which is really cool. I like that. The action on it is really good. I thought that this would be such a poor execution of a Hinderer knife, and I was like, Viper knives, what a random collaboration, right? Look at this. This is nice. The action feels great. The detent's not too heavy or too weak. The flipper tab is not an aggressive hook shape like it is on the XM18 3.5 inch. No. This is actually, I kind of want this flipper tab on all of my Hinderer knives because it still does that curvature thing where it acts as the guard, which is why this flipper tab is shaped like that. It's meant as a guard so you don't run your finger up on the blade. This is it's a better flipper tab. It's great. Landing zone's great too because there's no jimping back here like there is on the actual XM18. A lot of nice little things here that they did. I really like that. So this is titanium underneath. This is titanium and G10. You can get these, I've seen them in orange and green and purple and carbon fiber for a little more money, right? So there's a few variants that used to be available and a few variants that are definitely still available out there. I think this is exactly the version that I would pick up. Sorry, my dogs are barking at something, a squirrel or a leaf. Black, G10 and the stonewashed blade, right? But there are other options. You can check all those out in the links down in the description. So you can see here, Lockup. This does not have a steel lock bar insert. So the first thing I thought was, well, it's likely carbidized. I was feeling a little teeny tiny, weeny peeny little bit of stick. This isn't a big deal, right? Here's the amount of lock stick that's on this. Not much. That's not a problem, guys. If your knife has so much lock stick that you're having to pry it apart with a screwdriver or a coin or something, then you have a problem. This isn't a problem. However, reading into this, I did find out that they did not carbidize the lock face in this titanium. And that's usually, this minor stickiness is usually a result of that. Now, you can get minor lock stick on titanium lock faces that are carbidized. And you can also sometimes have lock stick on titanium frame locks that have a steel lock bar insert. It has to do with the face of the tang and the face of the lock bar. It also has to do with geometry. We have what appears to start out as a flat surface and then really takes an aggressive angle. That'll slow down wear over time. I'm not worried about lockup at all. In fact, it's very solid. There's no part of me that thinks it's going to disengage. But you're probably always going to be dealing with a little bit of lock stick on this guy. Is that big of a deal? Well, it would be had they not cut this out like this. You can see how they lowered one side and they gave you plenty of room to get in there. And they knocked this area down. They scalloped it. It's really easy to engage and disengage. In fact, I really just don't have a problem. There's no double clutch or anything, which is something that has plagued other collaborations. ZTO 562. I do love that knife though. But yeah, no, this is really good. I mean, it's just, honestly, you're probably always going to have a little bit of lock stick, right? Sometimes certain adjustments to the pivot can change how the lock bar interacts with the tang, and maybe you can remedy that, but you might suffer a lack of centering, or maybe the addition of some side-to-side blade play if you do that, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, it's not perfect. They should have been carbidized, but they're not that big of a deal. Lock strength, solidity, you're going to be just fine. We have the HMBS with a lanyardy thingy, which Paul has opted for, and that's fine if you like that. I'm not a lanyard person. If this were mine, like I said, I would just remove this, and I think that's great that you have the option, so there's no reason for me to dwell on it. Even with this removed, the position of the pocket clip is pretty low. There's quite a bit sticking up out of your pocket, especially with this here. It would have been really nice to have that pocket clip. Why didn't they move that up there? Just move it up a little higher, right? Hinderers don't carry deep, but they've got it right about at the peak, right? So this is about the most, that's all the more knife that's sticking up out of your pocket. That's fine. Would have been the case here, had they moved it up, you would have had something like this sticking out of your pocket, but they didn't. It's just a weird, it's just like, they were like, yeah, you know, so okay. It's not the most shallow I've ever seen. It would have also partially solved the problem of this digging into not the best part of my hand. But okay, you know, whatever. Like, I'm not going to sit here and dwell on that. This is really cool. I like this way more than I thought I would. In fact, you know what? This is super underrated. I really think more people should check this out, especially now in 2021. We have this almost humorous second scarcity of Hinderer knives. If you're not aware, back in 2012, 2013, Hinderer knives became so popular and so unavailable that their price on the secondary market like doubled. And now we're seeing that again in 2021. I mean, a lot of that is due to, you know, 2020 making it hard for him to produce, like with a lot of, because Rick Hinderer's not like this massive, he's not like Spyderco, you know. No, he's still a fairly small operation, but you guys remember when you could go to a retailer and it's like, here's their Hinderer knife section, and they just had a bunch, you know. Certain models would sell out quick, certain variants, right? But now it's like everything. Like Hinderer's like, I made a single brass lock bar stabilizer disc and someone will buy it immediately. It's like everything is sold out, right? So if you're feeling that pain, right, and you're looking at the ZTO 562 and you're like, maybe you already have it and you just want, you know, if you want to scratch the Hinderer itch, this is a really good option with a couple of quirks, but nothing that's making me think, nah, you know, like it's not a Hinderer. No, in fact, there's a lot more Hinderer here than I expected. I'm really impressed with this. I'm really impressed with this. Even if you're not a Hinderer fan, I think this is a great knife. They come in, they start out at $200, and they go up to about $219, depending on the options. Yeah, that's fine with me. I'm fine with that price. This is a $200 knife all day. It's a great size. It still has that Hinderer robustness without being like overly tanky. It's definitely easier to carry than my full-size 3.5 inch. This guy is way thicker, way more bulky. I mean, I've got a tie scale on it, but even if I didn't, yeah, this guy, the Viper Storm is going to be way easier to carry. It makes way more sense. Yeah, I'm going to recommend this thing all day. This is really cool. Man, what a stupidly underrated knife. Expect this to be on my next, when I do like top 10 more, underrated knives you should check out. I'm doing stuff like that all the time. This will definitely be on that list. I'm so happy. I'm so pleasantly surprised with this thing. And yeah, there's a little bias here because I am a Hinderer nut, right? But doing my best to keep those emotions at bay. Seriously, this is a really, really good knife. I like this. I wish that they had carbonized that lock face so that I didn't have to, there's a little tiny bit of, it's not much, right? Your experience may vary, but this isn't really that big of a deal. Wish the pocket clip carried a little deeper, right? I don't need the HMBS. Gosh, other than that, though, this is really nice. This is really impressive. This is going to go on 2 playlists. It'll go on my Hinderer Knives playlist, and it's also going to go on my recommended knives playlist. Definitely check this out. Like I said, links right down below. I really like this knife. Thank you so much again to Colorful Filth for sending this in for review. That was a very pleasant surprise. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.